Representative Tarver, for question.
Thank you, Senator. I wish I was, well, I don't wish I was a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm probably not as great and eloquent as Mr. Johnson and Mr. McGee, representatives. So my questions are going to be a little simpler, and I just want to ask you a few things. To whom are you guys, do you feel like you're accountable?
Well, we're accountable to our consumers to provide the best internet possible that they're getting the speeds that they're paying for.
Explain. I'm kind of new and trying to figure out how this stuff works. Like with I know there are some franchise agreements with the cities and the parishes and all. Can you explain to me a little bit about how that system works?
Basically, it is an agreement with the city to allow you to operate in the right of way in that city. I don't believe we have parish agreements, no, sir.
So you don't. You do have theoretically, at least, competitors. Like you mentioned, a couple of smaller ones or whatever.
Sure. Well, we do have competitors, and by the same token, none of these franchise agreements are exclusive agreements. I mean, we welcome competition. We feel we do provide.
So why do you think there would not be much competition? I mean, I say we, me being the citizens, we feel like that we don't have any choices. Why is that? How do you explain that?
You know, the way I would explain it is my dad is a deputy mayor at a small town in Mississippi, and he and I were talking about this maybe back in March or April, and he's not happy with it. They have a smaller provider there in this town a little south of Oxford, Mississippi. What you have is it's expensive to do, for one thing, and you think about any business. If you come in and somebody's already there, you probably don't see necessarily a market for you, whereas you might go to an area that's totally unserved or certainly underserved and target that particular area.
Yeah, but I got small car dealers in my market that don't have as big and I'm kind of in the middle, and they got bigger ones, so I don't quite follow that.
Well, a lot of people don't want to drive. You don't want everybody in town driving a Ford for like you mean. Well, it's a little not a great analogy there.
So why is it that we've heard this little bit of conversation about the regulation by the Public Service Commission, and you're under regulation by the FCC?
That's correct.
So can you explain to me what's the reason, why are you not regulated by the PSC, and why do you not feel like you should be?
I am not. This would be a conversation with probably we can get back to you on, because, I mean, for franchise agreements, as you get into that aspect, I can only tell you that in a lot of states we are not overseen by the PSC. For example, for complaints, that won't necessarily go to the PSC. It would, like in the state of Arkansas, that's a consumer protection division within the Attorney General's office. Your franchise is handled by the Secretary of State. It's each state is fairly different. Some states, for example, in the 18 in the Suddenlink footprint, 3 of those are local franchise states. Louisiana is a statewide franchise state.
Okay, I guess we got a lot to learn about this whole, because the internet has become something we didn't really have back in 2005 when we had Hurricane Katrina and Rita, at least not in this magnitude. But people are so dependent now on their ability to communicate, and you're a communications company. I would think you'd be hot on the communications delivery mechanism, and we are not getting that. And it's extremely important that we, businesses and individuals both, as well as, I'm going to get to our schools in a minute, but that's critical to us to be able to have reliable communications. And so that leads me kind of down to the next series of questions. And I think you alluded to it, Mr. Lee, in your conversation or your comments about the charges being, could you visit the charges? Because here's the thing, people are being charged for nothing right now. So, and I'm just got to say, I don't feel like, I don't quite understand how you can charge someone for nothing, because that's what we're getting is nothing. And how can you, I'm sure you can do it legally or you wouldn't be doing it, but how can you fairly charge someone for nothing?
So in in the areas that we've talked about that are so significantly impacted, first of all, we bill in advance, and we can't stop the billing from a system standpoint, from a systematic standpoint. But what we will do is on the next bill, we've told customers, don't worry about your bill. There's not going to be any late fees. There's not going to be any disconnects. And the next bill, we'll be issuing a credit, okay? So that's the way the credit will work, is we will proactively issue that credit, but we can't stop the billing cycle, so they're going to get a bill, and then they're going to get a
Right,
the next
right.
month they're
So
gonna
the
get a
next
credit.
bill, they're going to get a credit.
And
How
that's
much?
fine.
How are they going to determine the credit? Because there's been some question about that we would get credits from the time we are restored to power. In other words, we had the hurricane on August the 26th. My lights went out at midnight on August the 26th, August the 27th till now. I've had no service, but if I understand the way it's been explained to me, the day the power comes on, that's when your responsibility to waive the charges begins then. Is that true, or am I misunderstanding that? How does that work?
So that the proactive credits are going to go back to the 27th.
Okay.
Okay. And there's already been 14,000 requests for credits processed before this happened. So the link does work. It's just that I'm not saying there's not times that it doesn't fail, right?
But at this point, if I understand what you're saying, we don't have to request the credit anymore. You're going to proactively give the credit from August the 27th forward.
in these areas where the service is still out. And
Okay.
the ones, I mean, obviously some have already come back up, so they're in that credit process that's already happened.
Another thing that has come up, if someone changes from your phone service, just use me if I was to change and go to a different, like let's say AT&T, for example. If I said, okay, I don't want Altice or Suddenlink, whichever one it is, I don't want you guys anymore. I'm switching to AT&T. My understanding, and I don't know if it's AT&T, but I'm just using them as an example. My understanding is that my phone number, and I'm talking about landline, not cell phone, landline, my land number, you retain that landline number for some period of time, and then eventually it comes back to me. Does that, do you know what I'm talking about? Is that right, or do you even not know how that works?
I apologize. I might need to get you to ask the question again, but whenever any provider, I don't think our process is any different than any provider. Whenever you want to port your number over to another provider, there are certain forms that are required to be filled out, and there's just a process, but it's not that anybody is trying to hold a number from a customer. It's just fulfilling the process. So yeah, we do port numbers to other providers.
But your answer is that it's typical that it takes a couple of months for that number to come.
No. It shouldn't take a couple of months now. It may take a few days.
Okay.
I don't know the exact time frame, but it shouldn't take a couple of months.
Okay.
Now, I do work a lot of, when things don't go well, I usually get to try to help fix it, okay? And sometimes what happens is, I don't know, I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but somewhere in the process there's a breakdown where the company that owns that number, their account still has to be active. The number still has to be active in order to port it over to a new.
But you're just saying it should only be a matter of a few days.
Right.
It shouldn't be several months.
But if something happens and that disconnect went through on that other provider, then they have to reestablish that active number before it can be handed off.
So if it doesn't happen within a few days, that's probably because something
It's
went a
probably
little
'cause
awry and you
something
need to
failed
check
in the
into
process,
it. Okay,
correct,
good.
right.
So that's fine. So again, a little more tough questions now. Those were the easy ones. Here's my biggest question, and some of this we've talked about a little bit and has been kind of bantered about, but and this is my biggest aggravation. And I understand that the CEO doesn't travel.
I wouldn't say he doesn't travel, sir. He just hasn't traveled as much during COVID and particularly.
Okay, but here's the thing. Do you think the President of the United States is a pretty important thing? That guy made it down here, okay? And the only way you can understand and comprehend, the only way your bosses can know the magnitude of what we are dealing with is to see it. And if they haven't been here and seen it, they got no passion for it right now. And that's why you're not getting the help you need. That's why we're not getting 1,500 to 2,000 people boots on the ground, because they don't get it. And I'm very unhappy that there hasn't been a high-level executive set foot on these grounds. I don't care what the environment is. You could put him on in a spacesuit or something, and he could come see it if he wanted to. If there's a will, there's a way. That's what my daddy used to tell me. And that's the way I run my business, and I think you guys need to do the same thing. You need to get serious about recovery here, because we're dealing with some serious problems in my area. And I'm sorry. I know you guys think you're trying, but there's another old saying I used to tell my guys at work: I don't want to hear that you're trying. I want to get the job done. Now let's get the job done. And the best way to start with that is to tell your boss, man, I need some help. When my guys come to me and say, I need help, guess what I do? I roll up my sleeves and I go to work with them, okay? And that's what my citizens expect from your company.
Oh, Representative, as you said yesterday, and thank you for attending the meeting in Calcasieu Parish, again, I would want you to know that we are working on that, and keep just one little bit of context in mind here. You can't obviously take Lake Charles and DeRidder out of the equation and Leesville, but if you did not have those three, let's just say outside of those, nearly 90% of connectivity has been restored throughout the state. If you didn't, didn't have to factor in those really hard-hit areas.
And let me just use that as an example. Those are normal, disastrous times, okay? And that's my whole point. You got to be here to know what we're going through every day. It's different. It's different. Now, it's different from my friend Representative McCormick, who lives in Bossier Parish, and he had a Category 1 hurricane. That's pretty bad for him, okay? And I can deal with a Category 1 hurricane in South Louisiana. But the things that happen to us are very different than what your guys typically are experiencing. And that's what you need to understand. This is a different situation.
But, sir, I'd also add that in a Category 1 that hit Bossier, 98% connectivity is back.
I'm proud of that. That's the way it should be. But we have bigger problems. That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. It's bigger than that. And if we'd had a Category 1 or even a Category 2 like Isaias hit, okay, probably we wouldn't be quite as mad at you guys right now, because we're mad. I'm just telling you, in case you didn't know. We're kind of mad. But here's the thing. You even said it yourself. I wrote down when you said it. Now that you've seen the damage, more money and more people are coming. Well, guess what? If somebody a little higher up saw the damages, maybe more money and more resources would be coming to you. You know, when you see it for yourself, it gets personal attention.
There's no question that setting foot in a hurricane recovery zone does certainly widen your perspective. Again, though, I wouldn't want to leave the impression that they have not been engaged and understood the magnitude of this crisis down here.
So here's what I'd like to just kind of finish with. I have 3 goals that I would like to accomplish, or to know that you. So what I'd like you to do is, can you tell me what your 3 hottest priorities, hottest things are for right now, for us, for
well,
what would be
again,
if
I
wrote my 3 down. I want to hear what your 3 hot shots are.
You know, if I could actually call up Chris, who's a vice president for Altice Technical Service, joining us today, primarily from the recovery standpoint, because I think that would be a good answer, and Robbie as well. But my government affairs guys' priorities may not quite be the same, so I think they'd give you a better.
I want to know what the company's thoughts are. So whoever can do that.
So critical infrastructure is always the first thing. We're always have to. Someone mentioned the head end. Without that, nothing works. Then the main fibers leaving our head end to feed emergency services, hospitals, cell sites, schools. There's a hierarchy of priorities that we always focused on first, and then the next thing is what repairs can we affect that will have the greatest impact? Who can we get up the most? Where can we get up the most customers first? And that's really the way we affect the restoration efforts. I apologize. I really don't know the rules. I have such a respect for this body because you are the people. Okay, I get that, and I just don't know when it's okay to jump in and say something. I'm waiting on a question to respond to, so I just don't know the rules. And I know we're short on time, but if I could take just a minute and kind of share who I am and my thoughts. I've been in the industry for 40 years working in these same markets, okay? So I started from the ground up, installer, and I'm currently the regional vice president for the Mid-South region, which
I tell you what, hang on one second. Let me tell you what my three things are,
All right,
and then
tell me
I'll be
everything.
through. And then you can, Senator Chairman can take it from
I'm not
there.
going to take a long time. I just want you
That's
to
okay. I just want you to know what I think our community
Right.
expects. Number one, and you've already addressed this, and I thank you and appreciate it. I think you've taken care of it. Stop charging us for no service. I think
Right.
you've taken care of that.
That's right.
I understand that. Okay. The second thing is we have to get our schools connectivity restored. We got children that need to be in school, and they've been through enough. They've been out of it, and they need to be in it. And there is nothing. I think every one of my colleagues from my area would agree with you. There's probably nothing more important in the city of Lake Charles and the parish of Calcasieu, and probably Cameron too, maybe even Beauregard. We have got to get our children in school, and we have got to do that immediately. It has to be done now. It cannot be down the road.
Can I just
Must
add,
do
sir,
that.
Representative,
That's okay.
real quick?
You can.
30 seconds.
Let me finish.
Okay.
And I want that done by September 28th. That's the date that our superintendent says he's going to be ready to go. And, man, I just want it done by the 28th. I want him to have what he needs to put our kids in school, either at home with their parents or in the capacity of which he can in those schools that he can. Last thing, probably the most generic, but also the most prominent and the most important. I want a visible presence, an overwhelming show of force that you guys are committed. I went to a meeting with Senator, help me out, with General Wascom. Is that his name? You know who I'm talking about? No, it's Wascom.
Mr. Wascom, who is with the head of GOSEP.
He's the head of GOSEP. And he came in like 4 or 5 days into it, and we were starting to get a little bit disarray in our area. And he came in and he just soothed my mind and my heart in such a way that he had control and grasp of the situation. And I felt so much better after that first meeting. Y'all know the one I'm talking about. They had it under control. It was about to get out of control, but they had the grasp of it. And that's what I want your company to tell my people, that we got this. We got this. We're overwhelmingly present, and you guys can relax for a few days, and we're going to get the job done. That's what I want you to tell my people. Thank you. That's all. I'm through.
I did just want to add, sir, that you mentioned the September 28th school date.
Mr. Ayers, if you could.
Following
if
the
you could-
chairman's
if-
comments,
If you could talk directly into the microphone, put it a little bit closer too, if you would. The video system's having a hard time picking you up.
Immediately following
Thank you.
your call, Mr. Chairman, the CEO did say, and since I am under oath, I didn't say I talked, I visited with him, but he did, emailed, and he said that you mentioned the September 28th deadline, and Representative Davis did as well, and he put in caps, we need, in caps, to get this done by September the 28th. So, I have kids, plenty of us have kids. I understand the need to get this service back up and running, and I can only tell you we've been a long-time partner with the schools in our district, and we're going to make every effort possible. Actually, given that he said we need to get it done, we're going to get it done. I'm not going to say we'll make every effort. We're going to get it done. So,
Great. Representative Tarver, you through, sir? Thank you very much. Proud to serve with you in Calcasieu Parish. Gentlemen, let me share something with you. It was sent to me this afternoon, and this is the perception of the public and that what we have to answer to back home. This is a screenshot of your office in Lake Charles, your parking lot, which, by the way, is still not open to the public. It was taken at 3:03 p.m. yesterday afternoon, and my constituents stopped and counted. There were 43 Suddenlink trucks parked in y'all's parking lot in Lake Charles, Louisiana, yesterday afternoon at 3:03 p.m. Now, I'm sure there's a reason for that, but the perception of the public is they're not out on the street doing their job. I don't get off at 3:03 p.m. We definitely not getting out of here at 3:03 p.m. this afternoon. So maybe you understand what we're dealing with back home, and that's just something I wanted to bring to your attention.